Businesses struggling to find staff. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I have my morning stein of coffee that I'm already halfway through, and I thought we'd have a look at this article from news.com.au. It's discussing, well, some of the occupations that are having trouble getting staff, despite unemployment shooting up to over 7% right now. If you trust the ABS, if you prefer Roy Morgan, tend to double it. I like the unemployment and underemployment percentage of workforce, which is what the RBA would call, or the RBA and ABS, I'm sure they both call it the underutilization rate, which is about a quarter of the workforce. Because you have to remember, right now we have JobKeeper, and a lot of people are on JobKeeper that don't have to work. Wouldn't it suck, honestly, if you're the JobKeeper that doesn't have to work, and you've got other friends that are working? You'd feel a bit miffed, wouldn't you, with the same money? Anyway, if the government is handing out free candy, everyone has to take it, or else the other kids on the block are going to have an advantage over you. It's no different, sadly. So perhaps we're in a situation here where people are concerned for their safety. They're worried about getting ill. Everything in the media is focusing on this, and a lot of people are concerned. It's understandable. Employers running business need to provide a certain level of safety to your staff. If you're a decent boss, you would want to do that anyway because you like your staff. You don't keep them around if you hate them. You want to take care of them. It's kind of rewarding, particularly for a small business owner, which is the majority of businesses in Australia, to help people and see them progress in their career. But I can see how some people can not believe that if they've only ever worked for large, soulless organizations where everything's managed by HR people. Anyway, it could also be that why bother looking for work when there's the perception that there's none out there? Essentially people who are they're not participating in the workforce anymore. They may be getting the dole, they may be getting JobKeeper, but they've kind of given up. Maybe they're waiting out until the end of September to get their JobKeeper payments. Because if that's guaranteed, why wouldn't you use that up before you work? It's interesting. In the US, they have a certain time frame of unemployment, and when that, I think 6 months, when that ends, then all of a sudden people find jobs. It's that simple. If you get something for nothing, you're going to take advantage of it. People aren't stupid. People are not stupid. But the biggest concern is, I think where it'll bite people, or where it might stiff them, is that in September, once JobKeeper leaves and people's businesses start closing down, we start seeing more businesses go under, more people laid off, then there are going to be many more people competing for work. Now's the time to get out there. Even if you got JobKeeper and you're stood down, now's the time to knock on doors and try and get opportunities, even do part-time work, something at least to establish a relationship if your existing job falls through. But that's work, and that's extra effort, so I can see why some people just can't be bothered. But we don't have living memory of a recession. So people don't have emergency funds. People don't know what it's like to look for work when times aren't good. So, despite more than 1.5 million Australians being out of work, there are still occupations that are struggling to find workers. Focus has shifted this week to whether many unemployed Australians are dodging work because of more generous unemployment benefits, with a survey showing some employers are still struggling to find employees. And I'm sure we'll have people in business in the comments let us know that they're encountering these issues. I need to have a shot of coffee. And this is the problem, where if you make, if our social safety net, if the welfare payments are too high, it disincentivizes people from working. Because think about it, essentially say, once they reach a certain point and they lose a big chunk of their welfare, that's a disincentive. Would any person reasonably work long hours, 40 hours a week, and then you've also got to pay for your food when you go out of the house? You've got to pay for your petrol or your transportation. If you've got kids, you've got to pay for childcare. Some people may be better off not incurring all of those additional costs and able to be at home. Because, you save a lot of money on food. You don't get that, I need, your falling asleep at your desk at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock or something, you go out and buy a coffee that's $5 a day. You save all of that. That's one thing actually I've noticed, because this may shock you, everyone. I'm going to admit something here to you all. I have a little bit of a coffee addiction, just a little one. And I used to go, I had a tab at the local coffee shop wherever I have my business. I was that regular. I'd even send the staff over to get me coffees. Wow. I wasted a lot of money on coffees. And then eventually I bought a nice espresso machine. And now I'm slumming it with Aldi instant coffee. And I don't mind. You got to change your life. But aside from that, just moving home, the costs that we've saved in running our business here from the little room at off the back of the house, I don't have that commute anymore. And we didn't have a big commute. It was like 30 minutes, but still it was stuck in traffic. And one of the biggest things we would get there early, we'd all have breakfast. This is when we only had 1 or 2 children. Or when we get home from the office, when Rachel and I, because we're both architects, we both work in the office, and we'd just be exhausted. No one wants to cook. And you know what we do? Oh, look, there's a Macca's conveniently on the way to home. We'll just pull in there and buy that. And all these little things add up just to do with lifestyle. And I can see how some people from home right now may be realizing how much they've spent. And also, this may be the first time some people have actually gotten off the treadmill. They've taken a step back off the rat race and are reflecting, what do I want to do? So I can't blame people taking advantage of this time to dwell on if they want to keep fighting this battle. Keep running, chasing. Got to keep up with the Joneses. Got to get that mortgage, this, that, and the other. So Prime Minister Scott Morrison claimed this week that some unemployed people didn't want to work because the doubled dole payment of $5.60 a week was too generous. His remarks appeared to be backed up by a survey this week that showed some employers were still struggling to fill vacant roles despite more than 1 million people being out of work. I mean, this isn't news. This is what is going to happen when you have a welfare system in place. There's 2 things that happen. Well, a few things are coming together here. One, you've got minimum wage. Minimum wage has to be at a certain level to ensure that it's attractive, because you've got another government intervention. You've got free money. Now, the problem with having a minimum wage is it drives up your costs, and that's passed on to everyone else. So it increases our cost of living. It makes us uncompetitive to other nations. But it also means, and this is the most insidious part of it, it also means that those people that don't have the correct skill level to warrant getting paid that minimum wage struggle to get a job, struggle to get employment, struggle to build up their skills. So what do people do? They go to university, they pay a course, everything they can to get there, and then that becomes the de facto requirement. So you're at a point now where rather than simply just going out of school and getting a certain job where you would have years past, now you've got to have like bachelor degrees and everything. Previous generations didn't have that burden. That's years of lost revenue. That's not even mentioned, is it, when people are talking about housing? But nonetheless. So when you have these welfare systems in place, you're always going to have some people that just simply don't want to work, and they will take advantage of the situation, and that's just part of the price that you pay. And you've also got some people that aren't able to because they're not worth the minimum wage. And if you make the welfare too high, what incentive is there going to be? You'd have to be an idiot working 30, 40 hours a week extra for a couple of $100s. That's how people see it. They're essentially losing their welfare, and they're paying exorbitant equivalent tax if you take that money off them. The National Skills Commission's Jobs in Demand employer survey found 27% of employers were having or expected to have difficulty in finding workers, but the figures may not be as straightforward as they seem. The latest survey spoke to 2,324 employers between the 25th of May and 19th of June, who had 1,720 positions on offer. The survey targeted 5 industries likely to be experiencing strong demand, including healthcare, social assistance, transport, postal and warehousing, manufacturing, retail trade, and warehouse trade. It found these occupations were finding it most difficult to recruit workers. child carers. Okay. Then metal fabricators and welders. Now, the reason I laugh is, what was it? Tanya Plibersek was comparing childcare workers to metal fabricators and welders, saying the childcare workers aren't getting the same, award, same pay. And okay, I'm someone I've got children, so I've taken care of children. I've also tried to teach myself how to weld. What do you think's easier, everyone? What do you think is easier? Taking care of a kid is not as hard as welding. Okay, it's not as dangerous as metal fabricating. Worst thing that can happen is you can have a poo explosion, or they can wheel over you. I mean, come on, that's not that big a deal. You kind of grow out of that disgust when you have a few kids. What you need to do is you need to be very strategic, so other members of the family get the really bad nappy changes. It's a whole art to that. I'll make sure Rachel doesn't watch this video. Well, so I mean, that's one thing. I know there are, some people have mentioned that they're welders in the comments, and that's probably a really useful trade, that you could pick up, because there'll always be demand for it. And if you're a good welder, you can do some really beautiful work, some really nice detail. And it is hard. It's hard if you haven't done it. I bought myself a little stick welder, just welding plates together. It's fun. It is a lot of fun. Nothing's better than melting metal with electricity. And anyway, so truck drivers, receptionists, managers, retail sales assistants, metal fitters and machinists, and motor mechanics. More than 50% of employers who said they were finding it difficult to employ staff blamed this on a lack of applicants. Well, people probably they're taking advantage of the situation presented to them. Maybe, honestly, this is the first holiday some people have ever had. That's kind of sad in a way, isn't it? I mean, how many small business people are getting a holiday because of this? You probably don't want one. But an analysis by The Guardian of the figures found just 72 employers of the 2,324 surveyed were in this situation, because only 514 of the employers surveyed were actually recruiting, of which just 139 said they were finding it difficult to employ staff. So here's the real meat and potatoes of it. So the businesses that are looking for people, they're struggling, but most businesses aren't. Most businesses are not looking for people. I mean, we're entering in a recession, guys. So we're gonna see interesting things like this appearing. Where are the jobs? Where are the jobs? A lot of them can't be out there. The Grat Institute economist Matt Cowgill said he didn't think the figures from the employer survey showed people were unwilling to work. I think people aren't looking. I think people are not looking because they just don't think it's worth it. And they've got situations in place now where they can avoid it. I think you'll start seeing an uptick once the job keeper payment ticks down and job seeker bonus is reduced. I think then you'll really start seeing people hit the pavements. But what if you're in a lockdown suburb? You can't, can you? He said their survey showed a lower proportion of employers, 27%, were having difficulty filling roles compared to the previous report, ending April 10, when 38% were having problems. Is this because less people are looking to take on? Less employers are looking to hire people? It's important to keep these numbers in perspective, he told news.com.au. The numbers have actually been falling. In fact, the childcare sector has already been identified as a sector where employers were struggling to find workers even before the pandemic. According to a skills shortage report focusing on childcare, only 68% of vacancies were filled in 2018, and this is the lowest proportion since 2013. See, here's the thing. The government regulates childcare. They put all these onerous requirements on it. They require all the people involved in childcare to do these courses and training. I think it's overly regulated. But then again, I advocate a more free-range parenting style. Kids should play outside and be allowed to explore and create things, kind of like how we did. How we did. But maybe that's not how you do it these days. It's the fact that, I've got old cut-up bits of tent that the kids can use to build a cubby house and, tarps lying around. They'll grab my hammers and put a nail in a tree to build something. yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that as a kid. I'm hoping mine can too. But you probably couldn't do that anymore nowadays. I remember I have one vivid memory from kindergarten. We had these big timber blocks, they were as big as me, so probably only about as small as a kid. And you'd stack them on each other. And I remember we'd built cubby houses. And one crashed in on me. I was inside and it just crumbled down and the teacher asked if I was okay. I remember that, over 30 years later still. That's part of it, isn't it? The Department of Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business report also found applicant numbers in childcare were also at a 5-year low, with an average of 9 applicants per vacancy. Only 5 of these were considered qualified for the position. See, that's the thing. You even need qualifications to take care of children. I guess it's different. When you're putting your children in the hands of strangers, people are worried. You hear all the horror stories of kids getting left on buses and these horrible things happening there. So I can understand why people want to have, would argue for qualifications as at least a bit of safety theatre for them, or education theatre for them. It's childcare. Children learn by play. I mean, come on, a box of coloured toys, and you can create an imagination. They can do a lot of it by themselves. It noted the shortages were being driven by increased demand for childcare services. Will that continue? That's the question. Will that continue? There's probably a reduced demand at the moment. Childcare workers are still pretty low paid, so maybe it's unsurprising that there are unfilled vacancies, but it's something that predates the pandemic, he said. Mr. Cowgill said it was harder to tell from the survey results what the exact nature of the problem was. It could be in certain locations there aren't enough people with skills and experience to fill those roles. There might also be people who have health concerns. They might be immunocompromised or live with someone who's suspected or susceptible and don't want to take the risk of being a retail sales assistant or working in childcare. He's got a point there, particularly childcare. I mean, I remember kindy. Kids catch anything, it just goes through everywhere. And yet they let the schools open. I don't understand why. Mr. Cowgill said recent surveys from the ABS showed there were 129,000 vacant jobs, but about 1.5 million unemployed people on the job seeker payment. The number of job seeker recipients are well over the number of vacant jobs, he said. Even though there might be some people who might not want to fill those roles, with so many job seekers compared to vacant jobs, I don't think it's a major factor. He also noted the full-time minimum wage of $753 a week was still much more than the job seeker payment of $560. But you got to think about it. If you're out there working in a childcare, you've got petrol every day, you've got food every day, you may have costs to take care of your own kids, that'll erode that extra, $190 a week you get pretty quick. So what are you doing? You're working 35 hours, 40 hours a week for $190 extra an hour? That's the sum that people do. That's the sum that people do. People can still substantially boost their income, even at the minimum wage, he said. There is a substantial financial incentive to find work. And okay, I'm sure you get more than, because you don't lose all your payment on the minimum wage. Or do you? Let me know in the comments. I would be surprised if many people who see vacant jobs they are qualified for and are in the area would choose not to apply. I think it would be rare. The Commission's survey found 30% blamed the lack of experience of applicants, while more than 20% said it was a lack of skills. And here's the thing, everyone. This is what I'm saying right here. This here. You know how I'm saying that the minimum wage prices people out of employment? Right there, you're seeing it. Lack of experience and lack of skills, because you have to pay them $753 a week. So you can't afford to give someone that experience to help someone build those skills at a lower rate. Rachel worked as an architecture student before changes to the award were made that if you're over 21, you had to get paid the minimum wage. She was paid a much lower rate, like $6 an hour. She had to work, this is as an architecture student while still studying, she had to work at a coffee shop on the weekends just to make enough money to get by. And, that was useful to her because she was getting that experience and those skills. It only lasted for 6 months, then it went up again. Then every other few months it went up and up and up until you reached the minimum. But there was that period of very low payment because that allowed her to get that job. Now, the problem is when you create this situation here, where people don't have the skills or experience and you can't afford to pay them that much because they're not that useful, these people aren't going to find work. They get priced out of the market. They'll have to do something else, or they'll just sit on unemployment. They'll lose hope, and they'll leave the job market. And then here's the real insidious thing. You have people who are probably from a more financially well-to-do family will go and do unpaid work experience. There's a firm in Brisbane that was notorious for, and they're probably still doing it, notorious for giving people, 1 year work experience, and they're essentially replacing draftspeople with students for free. Now, it's annoying me because I was competing with them for jobs. Who do you think could do it cheaper? When I was paying people, they weren't. So then you have a continuation of the class divide. So the minimum wage, which people argue helps poor people, actually hinders them. I know it's a complicated set of relationships to get your head around, and most people will just reflectively say, no, we need it. There's an argument against it. Right here, we're seeing it in writing. This is where I'd say, as an experiment, we need to have special economic regions around the country where we experiment with removing some of these government interventions. Why not? Might as well try it. We're going in a deep recession, the worst we've ever had. Give it a shot. But there won't be the political will. There won't be. Maybe if we get some tough times, we'll see the next election. Other issues were location, the pandemic, and the fact that it was a specialized role. Regional employers were having the most difficulty filling their vacancies than those in capital cities. The survey... I need a shot of coffee here, guys. The survey listed the top occupations in demand: retail sales assistants, child carers, truck drivers, receptionists, sales representatives, metal fabricators and welders, delivery drivers, managers, motor mechanics, metal fitters, and machinists. I don't doubt there are employers out there who are finding it difficult to find people, but with so many job seekers for every vacant job, I strongly expect this is a relatively uncommon experience for employers. Perhaps he's right. I don't know. I'd probably, if you're looking for something, guys, I would look at metal fabricating and welding. I'd see if you could learn that. I think that will always be a in-demand trade. Definitely. Hey, and we're getting a Cold War, so maybe we'll start manufacturing things here in Australia. What do you think? Anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Are you unemployed trying to get into the field? Do you think this article is all BS and there's just no jobs out there? Or are you waiting to take advantage of your JobKeeper or JobSeeker bonus and then you plan to look? Are you trying to find staff and struggling to get people to join? Would you be willing to give people more opportunity to learn the skills or to get the experience if you didn't have to pay them so much right off the bat? What do you think? Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support us, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays. You can support us via Gold Pass or via PayPal. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you next time.